Hey everybody, and welcome to Threat X3 Productions. I am Nick, and today we're going to be doing another It's Free, so why the hell not? Or IFS WTHN is a show where we're taking the top 50 free-to-play games on the PlayStation Network, and we are giving them arbitrary scores and eventually ranking them from 1 to 50. So from the best to the worst. We're going to do it one game at a time, and we're just going to try to have as much fun as we can with this series. So please enjoy. Okay. So it seems to be an unfortunate habit for the IFS WTHN, and that the elimination of the first game at the beginning. The last time it was sort of just a joke because of just how bad and unplayable the game was. And this time with Space Lords, it isn't even really a bad game, but a game that is just dead for all intents and purposes. Like, you can still find it on the store, download it, and play it, but unfortunately no one is playing this game. And I do mean unfortunate, because while this game wouldn't be Game of the Year contender, this seems like a genuinely decent game. The visuals are great with an interesting art style. The gameplay is interesting with a mix of PvE and PvP third-person shooting, and even a sort of hero shooter in some ways. The microtransactions are non-invasive and only really for cosmetic. Like, you can buy characters with money, and you could argue some having better abilities than others, but this is common for most MOBA games and character shooters, buying another character. So as long as it's not egregious and there's just this OP character, then I don't really think it matters as much. So the fact that I have to automatically disqualify it actually kind of sucks, because it was pretty fun for the most part. So go peacefully down to that farm, live the rest of your life running through the fields, chasing all the chickens. Space Lords, you deserve better. All right, next. Okay, so Hawken. Hawken is an arena shooter like your Unreals or Quakes and that kind of game, but in mechs. It was released in December of 2012, so it is already almost a decade-old game. Ooh, and it shows. On the positive side of the game, most mech games seem to go a simulator route. And while fun sometimes, it can also just be tedious to play. Hawken foregoes the simulation to instead deliver a more mainstream or maybe arcadey feel of combat, with different classes and fully customizable parts. You can be sure to find a mech that works best for you. And honestly, this one actually almost got disqualified as well, but in the simplest of terms, I can find matches. It is clear that only a very few number of people actually still play this game, because finding a match with real players can be hard, but still 10 times more consistent than Space Lords, so no disqualification. Also, you can play this game with bots, so the developers seem to take the extra time to make sure that you can play with just a few friends even after the game is less popular. Space Lords, you could play with bots, but for some reason it would make you try to find real people for like 5 or 10 minutes before finally putting you with bots. Hawken at least only takes a few moments to realize that nobody is playing and just immediately throws you into a bot match. So that is kind of the main reason I'm not going to disqualify it. It's not going to score great, but I'm not going to disqualify it. Whether you can find real people or not, it doesn't really matter, because this is just a very bare bones experience. At the time of this recording, there is just deathmatch and team deathmatch. I don't know if in the past there were other modes, or at least something like a control mode, but the lack of modes really just boils down to you versus everyone or you versus 5 people. This is really a detriment to the game. That and the lack of maps means that in an hour you've kind of experienced all there is in this game. The visuals are passable. Honestly, it gives me Killzone vibes. Like, just the look of everything and the textures are very Killzone-y. And the opening cinematic doesn't help because it also really gives me Killzone vibes. The gameplay is the show stealer. Like I said before, this avoids becoming overly complicated and simulation-y and instead focuses on fun. So in typical mech fashion, you have 2 weapons attached, one on each arm, and it's mapped to L2 and R2 respectively. Weapons are temperature based, so no reloading is necessary, only temperature management. Then you have a thrust/dodge for L1 and a thrust up for R1. These both consume fuel, and the fuel does replenish automatically. So it's kind of like a stamina bar in that way, and you can do quite a bit before running out of fuel. So I can boost forward so I can get into battle quicker. Then I see an enemy, so I boost into the air to make myself harder to hit. Then maybe I do a mid-air dodge to the left to avoid some rockets, land on the ground, and maybe boost away to try to replenish my health, all before my fuel runs out. This leads to you feeling like a badass and makes pulling off some sick kills really satisfying. You can also equip 2 items on circle and triangle. These are customizable, and each mech starts off with some default ones. You have a selection of explosive mines, grenades, force fields, support style deployables, a turret, and more. Then the cross button is an ability, sort of kind of like an ultimate. This varies based on the mech that you choose. You can instantly cool down your weapons, overclock your shields, switch to a turret mode, heal yourself while moving, use camo, and so on, depending on the mech that you choose. This definitely makes it feel like a hero shooter before hero shooters were even a thing, or at least like a mech MOBA, which is a shame because it only has the deathmatch modes. Finally, you have repair mapped to circle. This is an interesting feature. You don't auto regen like in most first-person shooter games. There are certain perks or even deployable items that can help repair, but those only help to a certain extent. In order to heal fully or without killing non-stop, you have to find a safe place and begin repairing. By holding down the circle button, you will pop into third person and your mech will kind of crouch down to the ground. Then a little drone pops out and starts repairing you. And this isn't something like a stim from COD where it's instant. Think of it more like a med pack from Fortnite where it takes a while, where you have to stay still while it's doing it. Luckily, if you're interrupted, you can stop at any time and then resume when it's safe again. This makes it great that you're in third person. Most of the game, obviously, you're in first. So switching to third person, it really gives you much better spatial awareness and even see around corners while you're vulnerable and healing yourself. The gameplay itself is arcadey. The weapon perks, which are called internals, and the items are very extensive. It's when we get to the loadout and try to customize our mech that the dreaded microtransactions rears its gross head. And not just any microtransactions, but pay to win microtransactions. Now keep in mind, no one is playing this game, or at least a very few. So it'd be kind of dumb to go on there and start buying stuff up just so that you can kill AI even easier. But it is microtransactions nonetheless, so I do want to talk about it. So, weapons. You can equip 1 weapon to each hand. You can swap out your primary, but not your secondary for some reason. The secondary will stay the same depending on whatever mech you have. And you can use in-game currency or real-world money to buy new guns. And these are more player preference versus like game-breaking, winning combinations, but it's weird nevertheless. But the other part that is just kind of tedious is that you have to buy the guns for each of the mechs. So for instance, if I have an SMG that I bought and I put it on my assault mech, even if I unequipped that SMG on that mech and then I switched over to the CRT recruit, I still have to buy another SMG. This is not game breaking, but God forbid you find a gun that you like on one mech and you have to go buy it a second time if you want to switch to another mech. And then there are mechs. You have to buy those too. Same thing, you can use in-game or real-world money to buy them, but it cost 5,000 in-game credits. I was averaging about 90 to 60 in-game credits during each of my matches. So if we do the math really quick, let's find the middle, let's say around 120. So let's do 5,000 divided by 120. That's 41.66666666. So we'll round it up to 42 matches. They are all 6-minute matches. So that means 242 minutes, or a little over 4 hours. So I'd have to play for 4 hours and do at least decent on all of my matches to even get a new mech. Or hey, just $5. This is how most games, quote unquote, incentivize you. Not by making it enticing to buy the thing, but making the alternative a horrible experience. Making the incentive essentially skipping the BS is always just a scummy way of doing things. Sure, free-to-play games need to make money somehow, but this is never a good way of making money. So let's just rate and rank this so we can be done with it. So on a scale from 1 to 10, these are the things that I will be scoring it on. Visuals, gameplay, fun factor, monetization. Visuals. I mentioned it before that it gave me some real Killzone vibes. What I didn't mention is that they were the Killzone 1 vibes. Sure, everything looks okay, like no screen tearing and everything from a technical perspective works, but they are so dated, even for a 2012 game. So dated to the fact that you can tell the game is just hanging in there, held up by a small group of fans. So this one is a 5 for me. Gameplay. This is the game's main saving grace. The controls feel great. And to me, at least, the fact that it's not overly complicated or like a simulator is a great thing. The guns feel great, and I can definitely feel like a badass at times. So this actually gets an 8 for me. I know, it's kind of surprising. Then let's plummet back down to earth because it's time for the fun factor. I don't know if there were more modes at launch, and maybe they just scrapped them because death matches are easier to maintain in the long run. But the lack of modes is a giant negative for me. I like deathmatch as much as the last guy, but objective game modes are just my preference. So the lack of any type of capture the zone or the flag or anything other than kill that guy, now that guy, oh look over there, another one, just makes this game get old really fast. And on top of that, no one is playing this game, so you can only beat AI so many times before it just becomes kind of monotonous. So the fun factor is a 4 for me. Then we have the monetization. I said it on my first video in Let It Die that any game that lets you purchase an advantage of any type will automatically get a low score. I didn't give myself that much wiggle room because I gave that game a 2. So this game is gonna have to be a 1. Because at least in Let It Die, you can only buy materials to craft with. So while it's still pay to win on Let It Die, you do at least have to play the game to go find blueprints to use the crafting materials on. So you're just paying for the advantage once you get the blueprints. So you still have to play the game. But in this day one, second one, I can buy literally anything that I want, making myself way better a person who literally just started. So as Tyra would say,
it is so bad, I want to give you a 0, but that's not possible. So I give you a 1.
Okay, now let's rank it. This doesn't even break the top 10 for me. And honestly, I don't even think it even breaks my top 20. So I'm going to say 21. And I wouldn't be surprised to see it move from this point. All right, next game is Fantasy Strike. Will it break the trend of the first game being eliminated? Or is it still active? Find out next time on It's Free, so why the hell not?